Anyway, thanks everyone for joining us. We're the Fanatics of Film, and my name is Ben. Thanks for hanging out with us. This is a nice little segue into DC Comics. If you're a DC Comics fanatic like Joe and I, you might like what we're going to talk about next. We're really excited. I mean, I was excited about this. We'll get into it in a minute. But I mean, we're both big Superman guys. We love Superman. We love the whole story of it, and how for me personally. The whole idea of an immigrant, he's an immigrant and becomes an American, realizes how to become a great person, just to become a good human being. I mean, Sci-Fi's doing a lot of really, really cool stuff out there. They have a lot of really cool shows coming out. But I was excited for it personally, but we're not so much anymore.
Well, yeah, I just want to touch on the idea. One of the reasons why I've always loved Superman, I mean, when he was a kid, is because he was a guy who could do everything, and people complain he's too powerful, but the people that complain that Superman's too powerful are also people that seem to love Hulk and Thor.
Yeah.
I really don't see that there's really much of a difference. But it is the ultimate immigration story because it's written by the two creators, Schuster and Siegel. They were first-generation American-born from Jewish immigrants, European Jewish immigrants. So, and they're in the heartland. They were in the Midwest. So they're telling this story of them kind of, the ultimate immigration story through immigrants. But I also like how it's almost a Christ parallel too, written by two guys who aren't even Christians, and I just love that. So I've been a Superman fan my whole life, and I know a lot of people think he's a bit of a, but I think he's a fascinating character in so many ways, and we could just do an episode just talking about just how cool of a character he really is. But like Ben, I was intrigued by David S. Goyer's Krypton series until I realized that it's because learning about Krypton's cool, but it's its own continuity, and we're going to get into some spoilers here about the episode, but we're just setting that up right now. But it's its own continuity, so it's not really a prequel to the current Man of Steel movies. It's not a prequel to Smallville or Lois and Clark or the original Christopher Reeves Superman movies. It's not a prequel to Supergirl. It's just its own thing, and that almost makes me feel like it's just a franchise cash grab. I mean, I'm going to give it a couple more episodes to see how I really feel, but so far, like you, I feel like I was let down a little bit.
Yeah, and me myself, anyone who knows me, I'm a Man of Steel fanatic. I love the movie Man of Steel. I feel like it was one of my favorite films of the decade. But and so as a result, I was excited about the art direction here. They're going with a lot of what's happening in that, etc. But and to further what Joe was saying about the continuity and keeping stuff and what's a prequel to this, what's this. And I get it. With DC, we're not going to get any of that. But I think for me personally, I've been spoiled by the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah.
I've been spoiled. We want to see some continuity. We want to see some. I feel like for people who are diehard fans, it's a little bit of a reward. You get to see. Yeah. You get to see. Oh my gosh! You see things unravel or open
together
up
in a bigger universe.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful thing, especially for the people who are just love the characters and everything. So, but anyway, I just with DC, we're not going to get that obviously, but I think we're ready to get into this.
Well, because I feel the same way with watching the CW shows and having, even though Supergirl's set in her own continuity, being able to cross the multiverse, Flash's Arrow Flashverse, I kind of feel like I wish DC shows were like that. I wish that Gotham was a prequel to the current Ben Affleck Batman stories because it's set in because Gotham is not set in 2018. That first season, when it dropped in 2014, it's actually set in like the early 2000s. So that Bruce Wayne would be an adult.
So it would work.
So it'd be perfect. Krypton would seemingly be more important to me if I felt like it was leading towards the new Man of Steel films. I mean, David S. Goyer was one of the co-screenwriter, and maybe that was his original pitch. And of course, DC and Sci-Fi are probably the ones who said no. But I guess one of the aspects that I had a problem with. Well, actually, before we even get into that, there were several shout-outs to various different parts of Superman mythology that I thought were cool.
Please bring it.
We get the Fortress of Solitude, and it doesn't look like, Smallville used the same Fortress of Solitude from the Richard Donner Superman films and Bryan Singer's Superman Returns, and I love that. But I get it, we're not always going to have that because that's specific to that universe. There were elements of the Fortress of Solitude that were ripped right from the comics, at least when I started reading them in the late 80s.
What was?
Like the statues.
The statues, right.
Of apparently they're part of the family of El. Originally, in the comic books, it was a statue of Jor-El, and I always, forgive me, I always forget Superman's mother's name, real Kryptonian mother's name, and it's not because I don't know, it's just everyone talks about Jor-El, so forgive me if you know it, please comment it.
Is it Fight Like? So Fight Like El?
Yeah. Worst. Oh my god, when I saw that poster art and it's coming to the Sci-Fi Channel, it says Fight Like El, I thought, somebody got paid for that. I mean, that feels like somebody's sent this over to their 16-year-old nephew and said, what would you put on there? That works, we'll use it. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
but other than that, there are elements like I like that they have Kandor City, but there's things about what they're doing with Krypton in itself. It feels very far removed from any of the source material.
Yeah. So, I actually, like I said, once again, I am a David Goyer fan, and just real quick, just to backtrack on David Goyer. And this, I don't know if this is true, but I just wanted to make a really quick comment about Man of Steel. Sorry to derail just for a second.
No worries.
But according to some of the Zack Snyder interviews that I've seen, and I've watched a ton of Zack Snyder interviews in accordance with Man of Steel, that he apparently the original Man of Steel script came from Nolan, which is why the movie is such a Nolan-esque thing.
Yeah.
But it originally came from there. I get apparently David Goyer modified it, etc. But just FYI, in case any of you people, are if you're a Dark Knight Rises, and of course Batman Begins fan, that's, and if you notice their parallels, Man of Steel is very much like that. It's very Nolan-esque.
I felt like it would have been set in the same continuity.
Yeah.
The only reason why it wasn't is basically Christian Bale did not want to do a crossover film and have this franchise out of those three.
Interesting. That sucks.
And neither did Christopher Nolan at first, but that's because when they were doing the final chapter, The Dark Knight Rises, Man of Steel was just going into production. I mean, it was pre-production, like they, because that came out the year later, so it was going into production. Or I guess when they were working on that script for The Dark Knight Rises, production was just starting, pre-production on Man of Steel. I actually think Chris Nolan would have allowed that to be a part of that same continuity, but it's more or less Christian Bale didn't really want to play in the bigger playground. He wanted his film, his Batman, to kind of stand apart, which is understandable. He doesn't seem like he's the type of actor that would do big franchise stuff like that.
How would that have been? How would that have been? I love that. I love the Dark Knight trilogy, and even if they ended up having to recast Batman, that would be fine. The point is that, like, having that universe,
that would have been
unbelievable.
I'll tell you one thing though, I kind of would not have liked Christian Bale going, "Do you bleed?" Like that just wouldn't have worked for me. Like I do like the little vocoder thing that Bruce that the Batfleck wears. But of course, Ben Affleck's Batman's supposed to be older, so had the Dark Knight Rises ended a little bit differently, you could have just assumed that Christian Bale was just the younger Bruce Wayne, and Ben Affleck's an older Bruce Wayne. They still could have set them in the same continuity. Yeah. That's one thing, because I'm a bigger DC fan than Marvel, and it's not blasphemous for me to say that because I hold Marvel. It's just right below DC. Like DC, just for some reason, has always had this edge for me, and thank you. And I feel like Marvel did the right thing by connecting all of their television shows, current television shows, and movies into one of their two cinematic universes, either the mutant universe with Legion and the Gifted, or little ski wampus there, or the regular cinematic universe with your Netflix shows and your Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Agent Carter, and Humans, Runaways. I like how they're all part of a bigger cinematic universe, and I kind of wish that DC would do that. It would have been nice. I don't mind Ezra Miller, but it would have been really nice to see Grant Gustin playing the Flash in the Justice League movie, or not even going to the Flash yet, just maybe introducing a new Green Lantern, not Ryan Reynolds, thank God. But so with Krypton, though, the main problem I have with it, more than anything else, is they introduced one of my favorite obscure DC characters, and they screwed him up. Legends of Tomorrow introduces a really obscure character with Rip Hunter, but they got him mostly right.
It was great, yeah, it was great. But who is it that you didn't like for this?
Adam Strange. Adam Strange, created in 1958 when DC Comics were trying to push for more retro, pulpy 1930s, 40s Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers style sci-fi, which is why Adam Strange and his cartoon counterpart or comic book counterpart looks very much like he's like out of a Flash Gordon comic, and he's got the cool jetpack. And here in the show, he's a time traveler, which is not what Adam Strange is. He gets thrown across time to a planet called Rann, R-A-N-N, where he becomes their hero. It's a planet romance. It's a bit like John Carter or Avatar. And
what was the? What is this Avatar?
sorry,
That's funny. What was the? What? Can you name all the neighboring Kryptonian planets? Neighbors to Krypton?
the only one that I'm aware of, and I always forget the name. It's the one where Supergirl comes from. Well, it depends on the continuity, because in the animated series, she came from Krypton's twin planet.
Which is, what was the name of the game?
I always forget it because it's just...
It's on the tip of my tongue, too. I just can't remember what it is, but oh well.
Where in the new Supergirl continuity of the television show, she's also from Krypton, which is what she was originally from anyways. Again, depending on the continuity and the which reboot of the DC universe you're talking about. But Adam Strange... Instead, they made him a time traveler from probably a little bit in the Earth's future, going all the way back to 300 years or whatever to Krypton. I get that they weren't going to put him in tights or anything, but they just put him in a ball cap, like a Detroit Tigers ball cap and a hoodie, and like he doesn't even have his jetpack, and it just felt like
it was kind of silly. It was like it didn't, for me, someone who I'm not familiar with Adam Strange, just seeing him, it felt like it was out of place. From just someone who isn't as familiar with the source material, you still have to and the problem is they probably think, oh, if you do that, then it will make more sense to someone because it's more earthy or whatever. Right. And that's their whole. They probably have a panel of people saying that.
Yeah.
But it's actually, for me, no, it wasn't at all. It felt out of place and weird, and it didn't. Anyway, whatever.
Well, if you look at the costume designs, I mean, some of it's very futuristic, and Adam Strange, maybe without the helmet, or even with the variation of the helmet, his costume actually wouldn't have looked so out of place. It actually would have blended better than wearing sort of modern day skinny jeans, hoodie, hat, which nobody on Krypton wears, and nobody seems to notice this. You know what I mean? So. I feel like if you're going to take other DC characters, and I realize that even in some of the CW shows, they have changed some of the origins of some of these characters. Like, for instance, in Gotham, Ivy Pepper, that's not really Poison Ivy. In the comic books, her name's Pamela Isley, and it's a completely different storyline to how she becomes the way she is. But I realize that there are always going to be little minute changes, but I feel like if you're going to take a character as cool as Adam Strange, I mean, man, they just really
do it right.
Do it right. It'd be interesting if they introduced Space Cabbie, but he's way too far in the future. But man, he's another obscure character from the late 50s, early 60s of DC's sci-fi run that I absolutely love. Patton Oswalt does the voice of Space Cabbie in the Justice League Action animated series, which I'm quite fond of. I would actually watch a live-action Space Cabbie series. Just a guy who gets in adventures while he's driving a cab in space. Maybe sci-fi. You should have gone with that idea.
That's supposed to be what or at least what the Green Lantern Corps movie was supposed to be, or they have plans to do a Green Lantern Corps. More like kind of like Star Trek, like the original Green Lantern animated series, which I am. Oh my gosh, it's like probably one of my most favorite. DC property animated series of all time. Like, I freaking, oh my gosh, I love that series.
I love it.
But anyway, so any other positives or negatives?
Well, I thought it was interesting that like everybody except for Adam Strange is English. Like, since when is Krypton just full of Brits? And no offense to British actors, but I mean, really, to be alien, you have to speak with the renounced pronunciation, the Queen's English.
Makes them sound more smarter. So
in the original Superman film, the Richard Donner film, when they do Krypton, which I still think is, even though it doesn't really resemble any comic book or animated counterpart, I still think it's one of the best representations of Krypton because you really feel kind of cold and alien and sterile. Half the people speak with an English accent because there are a lot of English character actors, including a few Doctor Who actors in there, which was really cool for me. And at the same time, some of them are speak with American accents, or like Marlon Brando. There's he kind of does a vaguely English accent, but it's Brando, so it's kind of like if Michael Caine tries to do an American accent, it just doesn't fly well. But one of the things that I did find positive was how Brainiac's. I mean, we haven't seen his full look yet, but just what I've seen of him, and as you can see from the image behind me. He looks pretty cool, and I like the design of his ship is very much how I've always pictured, slightly different, but very close to how I've always pictured that they would do it in a live-action scenario. And I do like the fact that, here's a spoiler, inside his vessel, they do show the cities that he's captured and collected and shrunk down, which is hinting at, and if you're a Superman fan, you will know this already, eventually Kandor City is going to be shrunk and bottled, and Superman, when he finally fights Brainiac, will find the bottled city of Kandor and take it back to the Fortress of Solitude on Earth. But that's another thing about the show, and I think Ben feels the same way with me, is it seems almost irrelevant to do a show about Krypton, since no matter what kind of drama you put the characters in, whether the House of El needs to be restored or not, it doesn't matter, because in the end, it's all going to be destroyed, and you cannot change that. That's just Superman mythology. So how can you get attached to these characters? And please don't cop out and do a Battlestar Galactica thing where, like, 500,000 Kryptons actually escaped, because the only two survivors of Krypton are Clark Kent and Superman and Supergirl. That's it. Those are the only survivors, and that's all we need. So
one of some of the funny parts that I've noticed from this, just seeing this first pilot, I noticed it was, of course, they have the class systems and all these things, but it felt so much like Terminator. Because he's doing the time travel thing, and he's like, before you gotta come. So someone's gonna come back in time to kill you, so that Kal-El can't be. So it was that plot. It felt kind of stolen from Terminator for a minute there. I don't know. I mean, I get it. It's like you introduce time travel into the whole thing. You have to kind of make it work with whatever. But there was a moment for Terminator for me.
That's very interesting, because I thought it was a reverse Legion of Superheroes, and Legion of Superheroes comic and the short-lived cartoon from 2006 to 2007, which I thought was a really good cartoon. It's Superboy is taken by the Legion of, and it depends on whether or not you consider Superboy to actually be young Superman. Usually it's in one of the multiverse, but they usually take Superboy and bring him to the 51st century to be a part of the Legion and fight Brainiac, along with Brainiac 5, who's good, but fight them. So I thought there was kind of like a reverse of that. It's like David S. Goyer's mining various properties of DC, but it's just not gelling quite well, as opposed to like the good stuff he's co-written, like the or written like the Blade 2 and Chris Nolan Dark Knight movies. This one seems to fall more into the sort of bad stuff he's written, like Blade Trinity and the really not very good 1998 made-for-TV movie Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., with David Hasselhoff as Nick Fury. It's a wonder that he actually had a writing career, if you ever see this thing, and the dialogue is so terrible that it's amazing that he actually still has a career.
It's just funny. You have to look at so many different perspectives, and I feel bad for him, because he probably just thinks, oh, this will work and this will work because it's so and so. It's like one of my biggest gripes with this first pilot is that Strange comes to him and says, here's Superman's cape, and it's like he said specifically, it's like an hourglass. Once the cape is gone, then your time is up. So that's like a total Back to the Future hourglass. This is the photograph of your family type of thing, and so that once again stolen from. But I think the way
think about that. That was good.
Yeah, but the way that they would have made that work. So okay, I've dismissed the cape thing. That's my personal.
Yeah.
Not a fan of the cape thing. That would like this big red cape is the hourglass. So it's like once that cape is disintegrated or whatever. But I'm sorry, but that is really stupid. The one thing that you would have made, if they would have made the cape make sense, if he gave the cape to him for a different reason, and then later on he finds out that the cape is shrinking, and then he has to figure it out. It's like, it's just that it was so shoehorned in there. He's just like, it's like an hourglass. Once it goes away, then it's done. And so it's like you gave us all the information already. and it's, I don't know, not a fan of that.
Well, and I guess I also had an issue with the whole idea of Adam Strange coming to Krypton's past and saying you've got to, save your family legacy to have because Brainiac's coming, again, spoilers, but Brainiac's coming to make sure that Superman doesn't exist. And I feel like, okay, that's your very loose kind of way of trying to connect it to the keep the audiences who love Superman while trying to create this entire backstory for Krypton. Again, it's early days. It's just the first episode, and I have a rule of thumb: is any show that I'm interested in, I'll give it at least 3 episodes. 3 episodes. Should be enough to find out whether or not you're going to stick with it. And even then, shows can change and grow. Like for instance, the first 2 seasons of Red Dwarf are classic to me. They're great, but they're not as great as seasons 3 through 8 or the current seasons. Because same thing with The Simpsons. Because shows can grow, but 3 episodes should be enough to at least get you interested in coming back and growing with the show and seeing how it all changes. And again, I'm going to give it 2 more episodes, and we'll talk about those episodes as they air, and we'll see if anything changes. See if it becomes interesting.
Yeah, it is kind of an unfortunate. Of course, I'm going to give it a try too, but it's an unfortunate letdown. I mean, I do like David Goyer, but come on, this is kind of weird. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to some positives. Like so the visuals are incredible. The art direction is fantastic.
The ships were cool too.
The ships, of course, are great. It's very cool. They call them skimmers in this situation. Just beautiful stuff. Very, very cool. Brainiac looks amazing. Yeah. Very perfect depiction of him. Now, if I remember correctly, forgive me if I'm wrong, but at least in the Superman lore that I'm familiar with, Brainiac is originally his origin is Krypton in a
lot of animated series.
Right. Okay. So then is that the only place that his?
Is that the only? I haven't actually been a hardcore Superman reader as much since like maybe the late '90s as I have with watching the various shows, Lois and Clark, Smallville, Superman animated stuff like Legion of Superheroes, Justice League. So I'm not sure when they did the reboots, like the New 52 and the Infinite Crisis, if they retconned Brainiac's origin, but originally he's not Kryptonian. He is a traveler from another race who goes around collecting. Yeah. But I did like how in the Superman animated series, I really thought that kind of should have been really what it was, is that.
Well, it makes it closer to home because it's like he's actually Kryptonian, and so like there's a part of him, and it's like, why did he turn against his people, whatever? And of course he's an AI, etc. Like or at least some of the histories that I've read, excuse me. And so that's kind of a crazy thing. And yeah, having him actually be from Krypton and turn against Krypton himself, basically him allowing. I mean, at least that's what happened in the animated series. He kind of just allowed it to happen when he probably could have stopped it. He allowed Krypton to destroy itself. So. Crazy stuff.
Well, anyway. It's because in the animated series, I think it's because he's gained such powerful sentience that he himself. That's when he decides he doesn't need to be a part of Krypton anymore. He can watch them die, but he'll keep Kandor, and that's where he's going to start collecting, going around other worlds and just absorbing their knowledge.
So to me, that is really rock solid storytelling. It gives a motivation for your villain, etc. All these things, and having him just completely evolve, continue to evolve as an AI. Anyway,
let me see real quick here because I'm just to remind myself. Yeah, Brainiac is usually typically depicted as an extraterrestrial cyborg or android, and he's one of Superman's primary villains. Of course, there's several variations of Brainiac in the future. With Legion of Superheroes, there's Brainiac 5, whom we've recently seen with the Legion popping up on Supergirl, and Brainiac 5 is very likable, and I really dig him. So I think originally, he is not originally in the original, when he was introduced in the Golden Age of comics, he's not from Krypton, and just post-Crisis, he was rewritten, but again, not Kryptonian. So I think that was exclusive to the animated series. But in that continuity, it works.
Yeah. Anyway, we appreciate you guys hanging out with us. We have been the Fanatics of Film, and this is our fanaticism is DC Comics. We propose to you DCFU because that's what it is now. DCFU, DC Film Universe. that you please make a Man of Steel 2 or something, and get Brainiac onto the big screen. He deserves it.
He does.
Not in this. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm trying to be as positive as I can. This is an okay show. So far, it's okay. I'm giving it a thumbs sideways right now. This is my sideways. And give the video a thumbs up if you do like it. I appreciate it very much.
And I'm going to say the same thing. I'm going to get it kind of a sideways. It's not terrible. It's not great. But you know what? If DC did come out and say, hey, Krypton is actually going to be a prequel to the Man of Steel films, and we'll even tie a bit of the Brainiac into the next film, I would be okay with that. That would make me intrigued more. But please let us know some of your comments on this, what you think of Krypton. We'd love to read some of that, and then maybe discuss that in a later episode. So thank you for joining us again, and have a great weekend, everyone.
Never mind. I was going to say something, and I forgot. Thanks again. Have a great night. Take care.